I I don't know where to begin. Cause Jesus fucking Christ, that was a movie. That was very much a movie. And yes, it's very easy to still be jumping on the wagon I'm at a bit of a quandary, really, because when it comes to this movie, I knew that we were in some pretty competent hands with James Gunn writing and directing a Suicide Squad film after the debacle that transpired with Disney and those tweets and everything that kind of embroiled there. That's in the past. But what ended up being a slight little hindrance there in Marvel's part ended up paying off for DC, to the point where DC was just so adamant and just so gloaty with the fact that they were able to garner James Gunn here under their belt for a Suicide Squad film slash reboot slash sequel with whatever it is that they kind of had going on in this movie, that they made it clear that they gave James Gunn, I don't know about final cut necessarily, which is a very coveted thing for a lot of filmmakers to want to achieve at some point. Very few filmmakers actually have that ability to have final cut, but James Gunn has gone on record in interviews to say that he was given carte blanche to maybe kill off certain characters or do certain things within this film. And it definitely shows, because this is a Suicide Squad film done by James Gunn in the style of James Gunn, not only with the way that the camera moves and the way that the tone and the subject matter is handled, but just overall the fun factor. You know what I mean? You recognize when a James Gunn film is a James Gunn film, and you can definitely see the contrasts between how he would do a property with Marvel in the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and then how he would do a property with DC. And sure, you can then pick apart what one movie does versus another on that PG-13 versus R-rated stature of the gore and the violence and I don't want to say sex, but the language and the profanity and the vulgarity. But it's also in terms of just style and ambiance and just that overall look. When I saw the trailers for this movie, I knew for a fact we were getting a much more direct James Gunn film than we were with Guardians. With Guardians, the tone and the atmosphere and the banter and the chemistry between the characters and that team really was there, that Gunn has always excelled at. But the look of the film was never exactly, it always looked a little too clean, a little too cinematic, granted it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This feels more in line with Gunn's past films like Slither and Super, and even the films that he's written like Belko Experiment and all that stuff. So there is something more of the DNA of what he's always wanted to make, and you see that come forth here with the Suicide Squad film, where, yes, being that it's Suicide Squad, characters are gonna die. The opening of this movie lets it be abundantly clear that people can be up for grabs. Even people that you thought were gonna make it past this film made it from the past film. I'm not gonna go into specifics, because part of the enjoyment of this film is going in as fresh as possible. Now that the movie is out, not just in theaters but also on HBO Max, please, if you have even the smallest kernel of interest in this movie, do not go on social media. If you go on Twitter, try to mute the words of Suicide Squad, try to mute the hashtag of Suicide Squad. Do anything in your power to try to go into this movie as fresh as possible, because part of that experience is seeing the blood, the gore, the violence, and the fun factor unfold before your very eyes, just like it did with my girlfriend, not realizing that this movie was not PG-13. She legit thought it was PG-13. So when heads started popping, one of the best experiences was not just watching the movie, but watching her watch the movie and seeing just how Gunn's mind works, and also how well actors work with a director like Gunn. Characters that legit were just pretty meh in the I'm sorry, but that first Suicide Squad movie, there's certain characters that are just kind of cardboard cutouts that are then three-dimensionalized in this movie, that when either we reach the end credits or something happens to them, you then go, oh shit, hey, that That's kind of not cool, but maybe we needed that not cool thing to happen to then make us realize why certain characters bite the dust, why certain things happen. There's probably one character death that even I have to admit, I'm like, alright, you might have gone a little too forth towards the shock value side of things with this character as far as this person dying. But there's also some silver linings that I can kind of concoct in my mind, and also there's just this overall thing that you look at with not just this character but also the other characters that get introduced here, and the actors and the actresses behind them just are all at the top of their game. Who knows as to whether or not we're going to see them again, such as Idris Elba or Margot Robbie, who has gone on record to say that she is taking a little bit of a break right now from Harley Quinn. But I'm hoping that they can at least work with the same material and the same style of directing that they got with this movie, because you definitely get, at least for me, what you've been wanting from these characters in past films. Not just from their own franchises. But let's take Harley Quinn, for example. Again, I'm going to be vague as possible as far as spoilers, but she has a action sequence in this movie that's that is just miles above than whatever the hell she was doing in Birds of Prey. I'm sorry, but she has an action sequence here that is definitively what I wanted Harley Quinn to be, that was not found in Birds of Prey. And before you even say that, oh, it's because of the violence and all that stuff, Birds of Prey is also an R-rated movie. It is. But it's all about the execution. It's about that choreography and making sure that your choreography doesn't look like you can count the steps and the choreography in there like what was happening in Birds of Prey, as opposed to what you get here, where you get all of the different elements working together to make a fun film. And admittedly, I'd say that even though the movie never really feels genuinely long or too long, or scenes could have been cut or whatnot, it just slightly dips in the middle. And it's only because of how vicious and bloody the movie opens that it made it a little apparent, just a tiny bit in the middle, where it kind of dips as far as that momentum of those sequences, or where it almost gets kind of distracted with itself, just like ooh, look at this thing that's going on with Harley and this dude, or look what the team's kind of doing, undercover or whatnot. But at the same time, I'm like, you open with such crazy shit that then when it starts to not be crazy, it just stands out just a little bit in the middle, but it's never bad, and it's never boring, and it never feels like certain scenes should be cut, because technically speaking, they are essential to their mission. Now, with that said, I can understand if some people may not be vibing with this movie as a DC film, because something that might be lost on some folks that are especially DC purists is that this is not so much a DC film as much as it is a team on a mission that James Gunn would have wanted to orchestrate. That just happens to have DC characters and DC elements in it, whether it be a name drop of Superman. This is in the trailer, so you don't have to really worry about it. It's not a major spoiler. But of course, the incorporation of characters like Captain Boomerang and Harley Quinn and Bloodsport. It's most so about what Gunn would like to make as far as an experimental superhero, or in this case, supervillain movie. And that's ultimately what the Suicide Squad is. You get the character dynamics, you get the chemistry, you get the humor that Gunn is known for, his visuals, the way, like I said, that his mind works. And that's probably why I have this such huge affinity with this film, is that not only because I love seeing shit go crazy like it does with this movie, especially as it begins and it ends, but also because this is the kind of movie that I would love to make. This really is, as far as how the camera works, as far as the cinematography, filming it in IMAX, being able to go into lengths and breach away from templates. And yes, sadly, it is going to be a little difficult to then watch Gunn's third outing in the Guardians of the Galaxy series, knowing that he's capable of doing something like this with DC. I'm not trying to make this a DC versus Marvel thing, but it really does kind of make you think, how long is it going to take before Marvel finally pulls that trigger, both metaphorically and potentially literally, on a rated R property through and through. I mean, I know we got Deadpool 3 kind of being concocted, and chances are the safer bet is that Deadpool 3 is probably going to be the MCU's first genuine R-rated film. But even with the R rating, how far are they gonna take it? Because it's one thing to be rated R and only have like 3 or 4 F words in it, versus Suicide Squad rated R. You know what I mean? There's different levels to it. So it really does beg to question as to how many conventions can we really go through, not just with Marvel, but also with DC. Like at this point, knowing how big successes like at least commercially, critically, because I'm hearing commercially Suicide Squad's not doing very well, but of course we can also blame the Delta variant and all these other things going on with the world on that. But this does beg the question that probably even Warner Bros. And DC are asking themselves now, with Joker getting Best Picture and Best Director and Best Actor Oscar nominations, and the Suicide Squad being revered like it is right now. Can they be looking at a future of just pure R-rated franchises? Can the Batman end up being R-rated? I mean, right now, I think they're kind of leaning one towards the other depending on editing, but I think that DC should really contemplate of using that as their strength, that they can then kind of differentiate themselves from Marvel. Be like, hey, this is the one thing that you cannot find in Marvel movies. It's movies like the Suicide Squad. And that's ultimately my biggest takeaway walking out of this film. Not just loving it because it's the type of film that I would want to make, but also the type of film that I want more filmmakers outside of James Gunn to strive for and take chances for. And for that, gotta be honest, Suicide Squad is one of my favorite films of the year so far. Checking Best Buy to see when that exclusive steelbook goes live for pre-order. And quite frankly, if anybody that I know of that's near and dear, that's close to me within my circle, however, has not seen the film, I will gladly either go see it in the theater again or pop it on HBO Max and have a great time once more. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of the Suicide Squad in the comments. Keep it spoiler free because, again, I still feel like an additional week or so. I know it's on HBO Max and whatnot, but I want people to experience it the way that I did. And that's probably the best way to go into it thus far. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, like and share, subscribe for more videos coming up here. And as always, stay safe, stay humble. See you later.